All right, good evening, everyone. It's a great honor, and I'm very excited to speak to you all tonight. I've been spending the last few days with the organization in several campuses and several meetings, very interesting meetings. I spent yesterday in Boston, in Harvard Kennedy School, and Law School, and Fletcher. And I think, and I'll talk about it a little bit in the end, but it's a wonderful organization doing some very important things. And from what I could tell from firsthand, this is not only gonna improve our relationship and the connections between the U.S. and Israel, but I think it builds a very strong foundation, both professional and a real friendship between us and the people that we meet. And that's where it's very important. So my name is Amir. I've been in the IDF for almost 30 years now. I spent a lot of my career as an armor officer, all the way from a young soldier up to a brigade commander, and commanded the armor school. And my current position, I'm running the Border Defense Array. And I'll explain what that is in a minute. But before that, I'm also married to Dvora. We live in Modi'in. I have two lovely little daughters, 12 and 8. And as you could tell, and instead of spending the rest of the evening trying to guess why I don't have an Israeli accent, I have very close connections to this community. So my parents made Aliyah at 1968 from the US. My father was actually born in Brooklyn. And I spent a lot of my time living, or I spent all my time living in Israel, but a lot of time between these two communities. So this is a very exciting evening for me. And as I will continue saying, I think the connection between Israel, the IDF, the US Army, the Jews here in America is something that you cannot take apart, and it mutually benefits everyone. So that's a little about me. I'm running right now a pretty new organization in the IDF. It's called the Border Defense Array. And this is one of our attempts to try to create an IDF better fit to the strategic challenges that we're facing. So border defense is something that the IDF has done for many, many years. But about 3 or 4 years ago, we decided we want to tackle this problem or this challenge in a much more professional way. We want to deal with issues like force development, new ideas, technologies, and even new units that will deal with border protection. Namely because there's a lot more threats out there. Unfortunately, although we have kind of gone back to the borders of Israel and tried to create our own villa in the jungle, as former Prime Minister Barak called it, we are still getting attacked on by many different enemies from many different borders. And in order to give some good response to that problem, we have created this array. And what I do, besides try to find new solutions to these problems, is also to create a new organization or new units that will know how to do that. So some of them will specialize in border defense, while other units in the IDF and in the ground forces will specialize in other things, like maneuver or going into the enemy territory. So that's kind of the background of what I do. Now, I've spent most of my talks here in the US trying to explain what our security challenges are in Israel. And the most important point that I try to make is that these challenges change very rapidly. So if 30 years ago I would stand here, I would probably tell you that the biggest challenge is invasion by armies into Israel. That's what it was when I was a young officer in the Golan Heights. I was worried about the Syrian army attacking Israel in a surprise attack. In the last 30 years, things have changed rapidly, both in the Middle East and even in Israel. So a lot of challenges have changed. And even if you look at the last 4 or 5 years, things have changed. We've dealt with ISIS. We've dealt with the Syrian civil war. And currently, we're dealing a lot with Iran. But things are changing in such a pace that it makes it very hard for us as professional army officers to build and develop our force. As you know, when you build an army, it takes years. If you want to create a new platform, a tank, an airplane, or a new unit, it will take you, or it'll take most armies, 10, 15 years to create an effective force. In Israel, I could describe you a typical week. I think it was about a month or two ago. We'll start the week off with a missile or a bunch of missiles getting fired from Gaza into Israel. So the military will deal with that. 2 days later, we were foiling an attack by an Iranian proxy organization who was trying to fly suicide drones into Israel through the Golan Heights. And a day later, we were trying to fight Hezbollah in the northern border, in the Galil, because it was aiming to retaliate over what he thought was one of our attacks. So in 3-4 days, we're moving our attention between different borders, different enemies, from a terrorist organization, Hamas, to an Iranian proxy up in the Golan Heights, to Hezbollah, which is closest definition I could give is a terrorist army, because Hezbollah have more missiles than most of the armies in Western Europe have. So moving between these borders, moving between these challenges is something that we really have to get good at. So challenge number one for Israel these days is try to figure out who we're fighting and what to prepare against, because things are really changing rapidly. And the second challenge, and I mentioned it a little before, or the biggest challenge that we're facing now is Iran. Now, Iran, for whoever doesn't remember, is a country not very close to Israel. It's about over 1,000 miles away. And they're putting a lot of effort into attacking us from our borders. They're building proxy armies. They're firing missiles at us. We had, in the last 2 years, 6 attacks from Iranian forces. So it's quite a big challenge to fight someone who is not even bordering with you, but he's sending a lot of enemies to do so. So one of the things that we're doing in the IDF, and we're doing a lot. We're doing a lot diplomatically. We're working a lot with our greatest ally, the US, in order to try to fight Iran. And Iran is a big problem, not only for Israel, but for the whole Middle East. And we're working a lot with the US and other partners in our region in order to try to fight Iran. We're doing a lot of things militarily. Some things we come and we speak about, and some of them we don't talk about. But we're putting a lot of effort into those things. But I think the most important thing that we're doing is we're trying to train and create an army that will be able to defend Israel. So one of the things that I'm in charge of, and that's the reason that we created this new organization, is to create a multi-domain defense for Israeli borders. So we have a pretty robust anti-missile system, a lot of cooperation with the US, a lot of things that we do together with the US military, a lot of good ideas. Some of them the US military is going to buy from us, like the Iron Dome system, that the US military is looking into getting assistance to protect US soldiers. We're looking into defending our borders not only above ground, but also underneath the ground. In Gaza, we're creating a great obstacle to prevent tunnels. And we've already discovered over 20 tunnels that they're trying to get through. And also cyber attacks. That is something that we deal with. But I think the most important thing and the thing that I'm most proud about is the way we deal with our soldiers. And we're putting a lot of effort into getting more and more parts of the population in Israel to serve in the IDF. So in my units, in my border defense units, we have a lot of combatant female or women soldiers that are all volunteers, but we're talking about thousands of them. So in the IDF right now, there's over 5,000 women soldiers who volunteered for combat duty. We have Bedouin, we have Druze, we have a lot of different parts of the population that many times or in the past we thought they wouldn't serve, but right now they're all serving together in units that I have. So, looking ahead and what we have a lot of challenges. So we also have a lot of advantages. I think Israel is a very technologically based country. We're a startup nation. We use a lot of that startup and technology ideas for defending the country. But the most important part, and I think the most interesting part of the Israeli army is its personnel. Its ability to use the people of Israel and the different parts of the population in order to defend themselves. A week ago, I was in a place that most Israelis know. We call it the Bakum. That's where you enlist for the first time. And I went to see my new recruits coming in. And there were about over 300-400 women who decided to volunteer for combat duty or for combat positions. They don't have to do that. They actually have to sign up an extra 8 months to do that. And when you look at that youth and you look at their enthusiasm and their motivation to do so, and being as old as I am, we always complain that our children, they spend too much time on their iPhones and their iPads and their computers, and they don't really care about what's happening in the world. But this is a living testimony that there's hundreds of people or hundreds of women that are willing to volunteer in order to do some good, for the country. So that makes me very optimistic. And the other thing that makes me very optimistic is I think this meeting here and this gathering here and the connection that we all have together. And I've been in a lot of visits from US Jews in Israel, in the IDF, and I cannot understate how important it is. And this connection, and every time that Israeli soldiers see that they have US partners or US Jews backing them, it really, really helps. And besides, helping us, just morally and feeling better about it, I think there's a lot of cooperation and a lot of things that we gain from this connection. So I'd like to thank you very much for your support. Thank the organization for all that it's doing. It's very important for us in the IDF. It's very important for us in Israel. So really, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart, and please continue supporting and doing everything you're doing for the state of Israel.